This is a Looney Studios podcast. Hello and welcome to Aerde Talks. I am Hunter Looney, the Game Master. This show is here to dive deeper into the world of Aerde, which is traversed in Aerde Tales. And for the next little bit, I'll be the only one on Aerde Talks because of Leah and Noah's busy schedules, but they'll join us again later this season. So today we're going to talk about about orientations, gender, and sex organs. And I'm going to try to do my best to explain this. And I may make some mistakes, but I'm going to try my best. We're going to start out with some definitions and descriptions, and then we'll dive into each a little more. I'm not going to pretend like I know everything about these subjects. Think of this as an introduction. And I used to teach science and biology once upon a time, so spoiler alert, I'll be using some terms for body parts, etc. We're first going to define some terms so that we're working on the same page, and then go over how things are in the real world here on Earth. So for the first little bit, this is going to be just how things are on Earth and how things are defined that way. So let's start with gender. A person's gender identity is the internal perception of one's own gender, how one labels themselves based on their current perception of gender. For gender identity, a lot of people, it's based on social and cultural constructs of gender and what is expected of somebody that identifies as that gender. Those were some really complicated sentences to say. And on Earth here, in our world currently, at the recording of this, a percentage of society currently believes that there's only two genders of male and female, and that they or other people must conform to certain expectations with whatever gender society assigns them. But this is a binary view of gender. Some think that people must be one of those two choices, and those choices are defined by what they were assigned at birth, depending on whatever sexual organs they were born with. But gender identity is not determined by sex organs. And that gender identity duality, or where it's just two genders, and it's that binary view is not accurate with how complex the world is. So let's use an example person. Let's call them person A. Their gender would be located in their brain because this is how someone perceives themselves. Female and male are not the only categories for gender. There are others. And then there are people that just disregard the categories and labels. And as with anything in the real world on Earth, the world is way more vibrant, intricate, and more complex than just very binary views of things, or putting things into boxes. So let's move on to sexual orientation. Remember, we're just defining stuff right now. So sexual orientation is who a person is attracted to romantically, sexually, or emotionally, or not attracted to. And it is generally described based on what gender the individuals involved are. So let's take that example person again, person A. Sexual orientation would be located in person A's heart, but like in a fairy tale type way, where the heart is where a person's feelings are. So that's obviously not like where it actually is, but just think of it that way. So I like explaining sexual orientation that way because, like, it's not a choice. People don't just decide, oh, hey, I'm going to be heterosexual. And it's once again, it's way more complex than all that. And so somebody doesn't choose to be heterosexual, homosexual, asexual, romantic, whatever. They don't choose it. But that's not to say somebody can't change over time, because people change over time on so many different aspects. And there's not just heterosexuals and homosexuals running around. And just like I said before, like as with everything, it's way more complicated than that. But we're just defining sexual orientation right now. We'll dive deeper into that in a second. So let's talk about sex or sex organs. So sex refers to the sexual organs that somebody has. So some people at the time of recording believe there's only individuals that are born with penises, which they then call males. And then there's only individuals that are born with vaginas that they are then called females. And that those people make up exactly 50% of the population of each of those. But that's not actual facts or how the world is. That's not how Earth works. Real world Earth. There are people born with varying degrees of both male and female genitalia, both externally and internally. And these people are currently called intersex individuals, not intersect. Intersex individuals. These intersex individuals make up about the same percentage of population as people with red hair, and that percentage is a whole bunch of different things across the spectrum of varying degrees of each specific sexual organ. So if we're using our example again with person A, person A, the sex of person A would be their genitals, what they have physically. All right, so moving on. Now that we're working on the same definitions, as best I could explain them, to start off with, I described what goes on in somebody's brain with their gender, what goes on in someone's heart with their sexual orientation, like in a fairy tale heart, not like that's not where we have our feelings, and then we have what's going on with their genitals, called their sex. So let's take a deeper dive into each of those. So some people believe there is a spectrum between male and female genders, or masculine and feminine genders, and that they fall somewhere in that spectrum, while others feel that they don't even want to be confined to that specific spectrum, or that they oscillate between and around and in and out of that spectrum however and whenever they feel like it. So there are cisgender people who identify with that gender that they are assigned to at birth, and this usually corresponds with their sex as determined by their sexual organs. So this would be like somebody that's born with a penis at birth, and then they identify their gender identity as male. There are a female, somebody that identifies cisgender female would be somebody that has a vagina, has ovaries, and identifies as a female. So there are also transgender individuals who identify with a gender differently than what they were assigned at birth. There are people who believe that there's only a binary definition of gender, as in male and female, and that these genders are at two different ends of the gender spectrum. But, like we were saying, there can be people outside of this spectrum, there can be people in between, there can be people that move around this, move out of this. There's non-binary individuals that this is kind of a blanket term currently used to refer to individuals that don't conform to this just male or female. And this could be they feel this like their whole life, they feel this every day. They could feel it some times of the day. It's not. None of these terms in gender identity should be prescriptive and shouldn't last. Like, people can change their mind. People change over time. There are also gender fluid individuals that move between the genders and have a fluctuating gender identity. There's also agender individuals that don't identify with any gender. And sometimes there's people that identify as two genders. They feel like they're both genders at the same time, or they fluctuate, and they're known as bigender. Polygender or multigender is where an individual would identify with multiple genders at once. And people who are gender apathetic do not identify or care about being any particular gender. There are so many other terms, and I know I just threw a bunch of terms at you. But this is an introduction, right? So those are the ones I'm going to touch on now. But once again, the world is a complex place. It is very diverse out there. There's so many different people, and people feel differently about their genders. Just because they spent their childhood identifying as, let's say, female, doesn't mean that they want to or have to feel like they have to identify as female the rest of their life as an adult and so on. They can if that's what they want to, but they don't have to. So sex in the real world, remember we're talking about sexual organs here. People have penises, testes, vaginas, ovaries, and other various bits and pieces that connect and work with those, and varying degrees of any of those and anywhere in between. There's individuals with penises and ovaries and so on and so on and so on. Currently, a fair amount of society assigns a child's gender at birth, depending on whatever sexual organs they're born with. This can be most prevalently seen in what's currently called gender reveal parties. It really should be sex reveal parties, because they aren't old enough to determine what gender they assign them. They want to think they are, they have as a gender identity. That was a big, complicated sentence. After a child grows up, some people, or it could be even while they're still underage, they could start to determine and feel like they are a transsexual, which would mean that they identify as not the sex that they were assigned to at birth. They don't have the sexual organs that align with what their gender identity is. And there's transsexuals that want to transition to having different parts. There's some transsexuals that want to stay having the same parts they have, and everywhere in between. Generally on Earth, to reproduce, sperm is used to fertilize eggs being created in ovaries, sperm being created by testes, and usually there's delivery system for them to meet up using the penis and the vagina. And currently, at the time of recording, there are a lot of people who use gender and sex as meaning the same thing, which they are not even close to the same thing. All right, so in the real world, once again, with sex and sexual organs, the world is very complex. Okay, it is so complex out there. It is not just a blanket. There's males or females. This is what parts they have. That's just not how it works. All right, orientations in the real world. So we've defined orientation as who a person is or isn't attracted to romantically, sexually, emotionally, and generally based on what gender the individuals involved are. So let's get into some specifics of these orientations. So heterosexuals are attracted to a gender different from their own. Commonly, gender binary individuals, males and females, are used in examples for heterosexuals. Homosexuals are attracted to a gender that's the same as their own. Once again, commonly gender binary individuals such as female, female, male, male. Bisexuals are individuals who are attracted to two or more genders. Commonly, these individuals are attracted to men and women, but it could be applied to more genders, and could be non-binary individuals involved as well. Pansexuals are attracted to all genders and or do not concern themselves with the gender of someone they are attracted to. Also of note, bisexuals and pansexuals do not have to be equally attracted to each gender. Asexual individuals do not experience sexual attraction. Aromantic individuals do not experience romantic attraction. And also of note, someone can be aromantic without being asexual, and vice versa. Sometimes the term ace is used to describe, or as a shorter term of asexuals. And demisexuals only experience sexual attraction after forming a strong emotional or romantic bond first. So those were a lot of different orientations thrown out at you. There's way more out there. Once again, this is an introduction. Monogamous individuals are people who have or are open to having consensual relationships with only one other person at a time. Polyamorous individuals are people who have or are open to having consensual relationships with multiple people at the same time. And currently, at the time of recording, Earth, the real world, is a heteronormative place in most areas. This means that heterosexuality is viewed as the norm, quotation marks around norm, and that sex, gender, sexuality, and gender roles all should align under that view. But that's what the world, like currently at the time of recording, what heteronormative means. Like everything should just fall into line under this quotation normal view. And within this view, it is also assumed that most people are cisgendered heterosexual, or cishet, meaning cisgendered and heterosexual. And it's also assumed by many people currently at the time of recording that most individuals must be in a monogamous relationship to achieve happiness. All of that is just to say that is what currently is happening. And then there is a lot of fallout on individuals that do not conform to that heteronormative, very thin slice of what the world should be like. There is a lot of negativity from individuals towards people that are not conforming to that. Obviously, I've said a bunch of times right now, the real world Earth is way more complex than that. But all of this was just an introduction to these topics. It is by no means like an end-all be-all informational thing of all this. Do some research, dive into it yourself. There is way more terms and there's a lot of research, and if you're a person that likes like percentages of populations and stuff like that, there's so much out there. Estimates, of course, of everything. So that was all real world Earth specific stuff. So now this last little bit, let's talk about some of the things in the fictional world of Aerde that are little bitty differences of, well, little bitty being relative, differences from the real world. So from here forward, we're talking fictional. Everything before this was factual and real life Earth stuff. From here going forward, it's fictional. Okay? So, gender in Aerd, in regards specifically to gender and gender identity, the only real difference I think Aerd has is that most of the people on this planet don't have a stringent or strict view on gender and or gender identities. And that gender roles are not even close to being the same as they historically have been on Earth. I wanted this fictional world to be what I hope the future is like in the real world, where people are not as hung up on gender roles as they are on Earth currently. Each person can just be themselves and pursue whatever they want to do and be whatever they want to be without having all these external factors pressing down on them on what supposedly their gender should do. As long as someone is not encroaching on another person's ability to do that. So that person has a chance to define for themselves their place in the world and not be confined to certain criteria just because of what society thinks that somebody of their gender could do. So that's what I think of gender in the world of Aerd, the fictional world that I made, is to hopefully have some glimpse of the future that I hope happens on Earth. So let's go into orientations and sex in the world of Aerd. So sexual orientations are mostly the same on Aerd, but the percentage of people that are each different orientation and stuff are different from Earth, but I won't begin to quantify that right now, though. The only addition that I think in the world of Aerd would be species sexuals, which is where a person would only be attracted to someone of their same species. So let's use person A as an example again. So person A is a human in Aerd, and if they were a species sexual, then they wouldn't be attracted to person B, who is an orc. But if person A was not species sexual, then they could be attracted to person B, who's an orc, if they were an orc that they found attractive. So that's mainly the orientations part. So in regards to sex and sex organs, a big change that might be a little hard to grasp for some people is that males, females, intersex individuals can become pregnant from each other. Some examples are that a female individual could impregnate another female individual. An intersex individual could impregnate another intersex individual. A male individual could impregnate another male individual, or anywhere in between. Also, different sentient species can also impregnate one another. So, an example, again, let's say person B is an orc who is a female. She could then impregnate person A, who is a human male, or vice versa. There's one example in the fictional world of Aerd. One last thing. The ratio of people born with sexual organs of male, female, and intersex varies in Aerd, and even varies species to species. Here are the real-world percentages to estimates at the time of recording. So these are Earth estimates. Intersex individuals make up 1.5 to 2% of the Earth's population. Male individuals make up 50.8% of Earth's population, and female individuals make up 47.2% of Earth's population. These are the sexual organs of the makeup of Earth's population. Those are real-world percentages for Earth, not Aerd. So Aerde's percentages would vary species to species, continent to continent. But since this is an introduction, I won't quantify that here. So that brings us to the end of this episode of Aerde Talks. I tried my best to explain 3 separate topics that are very complicated. And if I made any mistakes, if there's anything I should add, please reach out to me. On the next episode of Aerde Talks, we'll dive deeper into the sentient species of Aerde, specifically the genus of hominids, which include humans, gnomes, giants, and others. So let's take care of some housekeeping here at the end. Our adventurers encounter magical items, and I want to invite everyone to visit patreon.com/Looney Studios. The link's in the description, and on the front page, there is a link to a Google form where anyone can submit an idea for a magical item. Anyone can do this. You don't have to be a patron. You can do this anonymously. You can put your name or username to receive credit if you want. We're not collecting emails there or anything. Please add to that list. This is one of Noah's favorite in-game activities, is getting those new magical items. And while you're there, you could also check out Looney Studios' Patreon if you want. And you could even become a patron, where you would gain access to this podcast early, among other perks. And here are 2 of our patrons, Katrina and Renee. Thank you for supporting Looney Studios and Aerde Tales. And Looney Studios can be found at looneystudios.com and at social media platforms listed in the description. Please give a review on your favorite podcasting site, like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube, and submit magical items on our Patreon. The Looney family hopes you have a wonderful day. That was a Looney Studios podcast.